Welcome to today's episode of the Financial MD Show. I have, as always, my partner in financial education, Dr. Trevor Smith. Hello, and myself, John Salitro, bringing you once again the latest and greatest in how to be a resident well. And a lot of our stuff obviously applies to anyone, but we're looking out for the younger guys, the medical students, the residents, as you're getting through and trying to figure out what to do, what can you do, how to do it right. And we can tell you some ways how to do it wrong too, if you're interested, for sure. That'll come up. If you missed our last show where we talked about buying or renting, we talked about some mistakes and things we've learned in the process, for sure. So go back and check that out. I think that was episode 3 or 4. So today we're going to talk a little bit more broadly about educating yourself. So you've gone through undergrad, you may be in med school now, you may be in residency, but you're starting to figure out, and it's starting to hit home that, okay, I'm seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm going to make money. I need to get smart about what to do with that money. In Trevor's case, for example, from an early age, Trevor was educating himself and trying to take some very proactive steps. We talked about in episode 1 how Trevor and I met, and it was simply because he was one of those residents that was a bit of an anomaly in the sense that he was thinking about this stuff way ahead of most of his peers, good, bad, or indifferent. And we got connected because obviously I like talking about it. He liked talking about it. And so we talked about it. And he was for sure one of the more knowledgeable residents on finances, personal finance, investing, insurance, all those different areas. So we had a lot to talk about, and he was enjoyable to talk to, not like those other. There's always, whenever I go to lectures and residency programs, there's always the one that's in the back of the room and, you know, raising his hand saying, well, actually, I read that. But no, so that's, I'm glad Trevor's here to help us talk about this, of what's out there for residents, and what are some of the places that we can help steer you to. So today's going to be kind of a resource show. So Trevor, what's on your mind? Where would you start when it comes to resident finance?
Great question. When you were talking about how I was interested in the subject early on, my first thought was my program director telling me to study more ophthalmology and to focus on other things later. And I do think it's definitely important to focus on your residency training. But if you're putting, and you already are, putting 99% of your time into reading the required textbooks and studying for that main exam every year, if you occasionally read an article online and it has a super high yield impact on your financial future, that's okay too. So I spent probably a little bit more time on that stuff, and I found, you and I have been talking about, I've been reflecting how much I find the stuff interesting just naturally. Not everybody feels that way, but just an article here or there is not a bad way to start. The motivated people in these areas are probably going to read naturally a little bit more, probably not even pick up a book, but just read some, white coat investor, probably specific to topics. I was thinking about that yesterday. I was like, what kind of curriculum, if I was to write a book on this, like, what would I want to write? And I thought, certainly it would have been easier if I had somebody like you who gave me a plan and a trajectory and steps. That would probably rank at the top of the smartest ways, like, to do it. Highest yield amount of time. You don't charge very much. Obviously, you do more of a fee based for residents. But I think if you just randomly try to address your individual questions, so if you're like, I've heard a Roth IRA is a no brainer. Maybe I should look up a Roth IRA. Like, I think a lot of people kind of can benefit from that in residency, and anything you've heard that is like a no-brainer in finance, as long as it's not going to make somebody a bunch of money on a sales commission like whole life or something, it's worth a Google. Everyone has their phone with them. You go to the bathroom with your phone half the time. People usually do, right? I mean,
Yep.
take a moment and read that article. That like thing you've been meaning to Google, that you've been anxious about Googling, that you keep pushing off, that like thing that you don't want to try to look up more information, even though you know you should. That's usually like the first thing you should go do.
Yeah.
And Tim Ferriss talks about that a lot. He's like, what's that thing that you know you
Mm.
should do, but you haven't and you don't want to do because it feels like a lot of work, even though it's not? Like, do that thing. Just start with that. Just do that thing.
Mm.
I think for the people who aren't gonna like pick up a whole book, that's a good way to start. If I was to do it over again, I think having somebody in my corner like you, it sounds like an advertisement. I'm trying to make it not sound like an advertisement, but
Sure, we
it's
can generalize.
it's it's true though. You have worked with lots of people. It's one of those things you're like, I don't know how I went about not getting somebody more official, especially at like a low rate, because it
I
does
mean,
all
there's
the
a
you do
certain
all the
amount
work
of,
for you.
yeah, but I think there's a certain amount of,
Talk me out of it, out of your services. I mean, kind of to a degree. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
it costs
From what
money.
I
That's
see
the
is,
downside, right? I mean, that's it.
yeah, I'd say that's it. And I think there's this, not a stigma, but this feeling people have like, well, I really, I mean, there's not much that I can do anyway. I probably wouldn't be utilizing this guy's time really well. I'm just a resident. I don't make that much money. What can I really do? I want to
Right.
learn, but I don't want to actually meet with a financial planner. And then there's the next level of it, which is legitimate. I don't know this guy. I don't want to tell him about my financial life. I don't know if I
Yeah, that
trust
makes
him.
sense. Yeah,
I've heard some sleazy things about financial advisors and blah blah blah.
sure.
Like,
So there's
I get it.
some mental barriers there.
Yes, so that's probably a good thing to bring up is what are the barriers that are preventing you from not just meeting with a financial planner, but taking action on anything?
Mhm.
And from the very small
Mhm.
end, like you're saying, Tim Ferriss said, what's the barrier that's keeping you from just taking that step of researching
Right.
something or doing whatever? And to then, you can have a paralysis by analysis and you can get
Right.
inundated with information and knowledge, but knowledge without execution is meaningless, right?
Right.
You can know all this stuff
Yeah.
and
Yeah. The other thing I was just thinking as you were saying that is, it is there's hesitations, there's this and that. I was talking with a friend looking at a car recently and doing like, and I was kind of helping and just enjoying looking at the process of maximizing value. I mean, that's why I like this stuff. Like, what's the best deal? Consumer
mm-hmm,
reports up and down the board.
yep,
Okay, all-wheel drive SUV, Mazda CX-5 is a great value. Lexus RX 350 is a great value. Even old, you can pick up, a 2010, a 2012. They're going to drive for a long time. It's like a Corolla, but if you want an SUV all-wheel drive, it's a good one. Um, and it's like how can you maximize the value there, and how can you once you have and you've deliberated and deliberated, there comes a point where you just have to actually like put the money down. You have to pull the trigger.
yep,
And that's the other thing Tim Ferriss says. He's like, if you're gonna try to make a decision, making a decision and then changing it back is fine. Try to make a reversible decision. Try to make it as fast as you can, because you're losing more by waiting and not trying that than you are by trying it and then canceling it. So, like, you want to try a financial advisor, find one that's not, too expensive. Okay, now you tried a cheap or an inexpensive financial advisor. Doesn't mean all financial advisors are bad, but at least you tried one. If you didn't like it and it was cheap, well, maybe you need to pay a little bit more for higher quality. I mean, there's
mm-hmm,
just different things you learn along the way. I tried that with a tax, um, like a tax strategist guy who's a
mm-hmm,
CPA, and it just ended up kind of for the cheap price I was paying, not cheap, but the low end of the
yeah,
offerings that are available on White Coat's site. It ended up being cheap advice for a cheap price.
right, right,
Um, so, anyways, yeah, I'd say I don't know why we're talking about Tim Ferriss so much, but do that thing that you've been thinking about, the thing you should be figuring out. And then he also talks about outsourcing. So, I mean, having an advisor
oh
is
yeah,
that other strategy. It's basically like if you're going to Tim Ferriss your finances, you're either going to like do the hardest thing. If you don't want to, outsource it.
mm-hmm,
And then if you're not sure what to do, just try something, do something. Ask a friend. Everybody knows one person that is a little more interested in this stuff. Ask their friend, what do you think? And then if they give you a strong piece of advice, say, well, how do you know that's true? It's that's a good step too. Try to figure out, what you're
Mm-hmm.
learning. Is it true? How can you validate it?
Yeah, go back to
Um,
the source and just
yeah,
good way to ask that. Maybe not is it true, but oh, really? Where'd you hear that? Or oh, where'd you read that?
yeah,
Oh,
right. Yeah, you don't want to be.
where could I learn more about that?
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know. That's kind of like a big picture approach, but it's kind of how I've done it, which is a little slower than going straight to an expert source. Um, some people just have to learn by making their own mistakes.
Yeah, but don't people
Uh,
do that with medicine too? I mean, patients are Googling crap all day long before they talk to a doctor. And
yeah.
by the time they get to the doctor, they have some preconceived notion of what they have. We get that in financial planning all the time, for sure.
Hmm.
I get second guessed by
Oh
people, which
yeah.
isn't
Me too. Me
bad.
too.
Yeah, I get it, and I absolutely don't mind the questions. I really don't. Now, if they start to fight me on something or say this is what I need, then take a hike. But if it's like, well, don't you think I should be doing this, or shouldn't I be putting more of my student loans, or this or that? And I'll usually say, hey, that's a fair question. Let's talk about that. And here's my
Hmm.
rationale. And it usually means I haven't explained my rationale very well, or
Yep.
they just need to get
Same.
this off their chest and
Yep.
they just want to be
Yeah.
more educated.
Especially, I think I didn't appreciate that as much as a resident in the patient interaction, like the art of medicine. It's a People talk about that a lot. I'm only like 2 years out, right? And I'm already like,
Mm-hmm.
wow, I'm getting substantially better at addressing what a person is asking when they're not asking that question.
Ah,
They're saying something
yes.
and they're asking a question, but they're not really asking that question. There's a different question behind that question.
The
And
question behind the question. That's,
yeah, it's
yep.
cool. I didn't think I would like that part of medicine, to be honest. I kind of found it frustrating in residency. But then
Mm-hmm.
over time you realize like that's kind of I don't know, that's how you really make people happy. You like really can satisfy
Mm-hmm.
your patients a bit more
Yep.
by learning what they're thinking. Where are they
Yep.
coming from? What are they trying to say and walk away with?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, and
anyways, yeah.
in fact, I had a conversation this morning with one of my favorite clients. She's her husband's the resident, and she's very knowledgeable on finances. And so when we first started the relationship, I knew this was going to be
Hmm.
um, not a challenge, but it would be a challenge that I was up for and enjoyed because she asked a ton of questions, and I could tell by her questions that she knew what she was talking about. And
Hmm.
um, she asked about a CFP, and I said, yeah, I'm in the process of getting my CFP, and like we talked about all these things, um, and so I said to myself, okay, if I'm going to bring these on as clients, I better be prepared to make sure I know my stuff and that I'm explaining it well. And we had a conversation this morning, she and I, because she had asked a question by email a week ago and was like, hey, so I could tell by her email that she wasn't completely satisfied with the last review that we had had. And I think if I was younger or newer, I would have freaked out and just been like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to say here. Like, I did
Mm-hmm.
my best and it's not good enough. They're going to
Hmm.
leave me. But I just sat down with her and said, hey, so it sounds like maybe our expectations or what you expect from financial planners is maybe not exactly what I'm delivering, which is fine. Most of my physicians are good with, talking every 6 months, and I look at their stuff and we talk and I tell them what to do and they walk away, and that's what they wanted. They just wanted someone to tell them what to do, and they really don't need an
Hmm.
explanation or an education, and they just want to know what to do right now. And then they know in 6 months there'll be more stuff to do, and I'll tell them then and give them to-do list. And I said, if that doesn't work for you, that's totally fine. I'm open to being flexible on that. And would it help if I structured it this way? And the output that I give you, or the kind of deliverable or take home, looks more like this and shows more detail in these areas. And um, it ended up being a really good conversation. And I think she felt like she was heard, And
Mm-hmm.
I was flexible and just said, yeah, that's, this isn't necessarily a cookie cutter process. And she's one that I value their relationship, and I can't do that for everybody because we just don't have that much time. But,
And
once in
you
a
don't
while
need to.
it's,
You don't need
no,
to.
I don't need to. And
Yeah.
that's
It's yeah.
I remember learning in some of my training years ago, some leadership training that I took. Andy Stanley said, do for one what you wish you could do for everyone. Because
Yeah.
people always operate with this mentality of, well, I can't treat this customer this way because then I'm going to treat everybody that way.
Right.
And
But you don't.
rarely does that. That never
Mm-hmm.
happens,
Mm-hmm.
And so it's, I've been trying to handle it that way. And she just wanted to know that I was truly answering all the questions that she had and wanted to see some
Yeah.
rationale of why. I think
Mm-hmm.
they trust me, but they just still like to, that's just how she ticks, and that's fine.
Totally.
And that's the same way with some of your patients, I'm sure. Like, they just
Oh
want to
yeah.
know that they're heard and you're hearing them and their concerns are being addressed. And they trust you, but their
Right.
personality, they're probably the engineer types or whatever, are just wired to, okay, I just want to know what your thought process was.
Right. Yeah.
So,
And you're right. It's crazy. It's a service industry, right? You're in a service
mhm,
industry. I'm in a
mhm.
service industry, and sometimes it's annoying to have that patient in your chair, frankly, because they're difficult. It's emotionally more taxing, and it in the end, maybe that person's more satisfied later. Maybe they're not. Maybe you sat there for 20-30 minutes, and sometimes, no exaggeration, it can be that long if somebody really really is feeling like they need something more, and you give them all the time you possibly could, and you're running behind, and then that's the patient that didn't feel like you paid attention. And
Mhm.
every any physician of any kind, or PA or whatever, listening to this will totally think of their most recent person in the last week or two that's been
Yeah.
similar to that. And you can go a month, 2 months without having one that really stands out, but there's always, like, there's varying degrees. um and there's a different kind of satisfaction sometimes, I think, in providing that, even like above and beyond level of care and time, generosity for that individual, when they might not even be grateful for it. And
Yeah.
that's more on the medicine side, not so much on the finance stuff. But
No,
um,
I've certainly had those experiences too, for
yeah.
sure.
So, and I know when people do that for me, and a customer service thing, and I really do appreciate it. And
Mhm.
I try to, because of being in service, I try to express it more than I would otherwise. But just because I don't doesn't mean I'm not grateful. So I feel like I'm just,
Yeah.
this is just a good reminder for me, just even if you don't feel like somebody's grateful, doesn't mean they're not. And
Yeah.
it's good to provide that extra. But back
Sure.
to finance. What were we talking about?
Right. Good life lessons. I uh so we were talking about, I'm not sure, but let's
E-
get into some other ways.
Education for
Yeah,
for
other ways
residents.
they can get
Things residents
educated.
can do.
Yeah. Um so on that note of eh, taking action, like doing something. The thing that I love, and I talk about in my lectures all the time, is
Mhm.
that there is technology that you can automate. Okay, so once you learn something like I need
Yeah.
to get a Roth IRA, or I need to get a budget, or I need to get disability insurance, or whatever the case might be, there is technology that you can put into place to, even before that part, to help educate you, right? Like,
Mhm.
so for example, I follow the same people that probably a lot of people listening here do, like the White Coat Investor and
Mhm.
the Physician on Fire and all these guys. And I have them on Twitter, and so I've set it up so I get notified when the White Coat Investor comes out with something. And
Mhm.
I I use an app called Feedly for my blog collections. What do you use, Trevor?
I don't have a blog collector. The ones that really stick with me I use Medium, so I'll subscribe to
Mm-hmm.
channels or users or whatever on Medium. I like
Okay.
that. So you can do both channels and individuals, and then I'll
Gotcha.
give little, maybe it's even daily emails. That's a nice one. You can write on there too, as
Hmm.
well as just read other people's work.
Yeah,
Twitter's a big one, and
Twitter,
then
right.
yeah, a lot of
Instagram.
stuff. Instagram, I don't use a ton for learning. For
Mm-mm.
that, to me, that's a bit more um, social. But yeah, so I like Twitter quite a bit actually. I feel like I've learned a lot in the last year or two. You also get very differing opinions on Twitter just due to
Yeah.
the nature of it. But I think there's a significant percentage of people in the medical world that are not really going to get into Twitter. I think the high yield things are the financial blogs, and you can subscribe to those pretty easily. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, as soon as you go on the site, there's like a pop up like, "Hey, give us your email right now." So
Yep.
you'll definitely get lots of email from those people.
Yeah,
Those are
and that's good.
probably the main ones. And books.
Good.
I mean, I think books are better. Honestly, I think the books are best.
Okay.
Um, People sit down and so intentionally organize their thoughts when they write a book. And I think that's very, in the current kind of blog style, it's very underrated to read a book. Physical book doesn't matter, whatever. I mean, you can get a Kindle and read it like a PDF if you want to.
Yeah.
But like one of my favorite ones I have right here is "I Will Teach You to Be Rich." It's just
Yeah.
it's so well organized, and it's it's in an order, and it's mentally in my mind like these are the steps, um and yet you can still flip through it and look for answers to certain things. I like that. I think that that's an excellent resource for people that are just trying to figure stuff out.
Okay, that's a great one. Yeah, on that topic, what books would I recommend for that area? I think everyone should read through Dave Ramsey's book, um, Finance,
Total Money Makeover.
Total Money Makeover. Yep,
Yeah, that's a good
for
one.
sure. It's a good place to make sure you're thinking right about money and debt and budgeting and all those things. And probably the White Coat Investors book.
Hmm.
Have you read that one, Trevor?
I've skimmed it. I haven't read the whole thing. No.
Mm-mm. And maybe you can get
I
everything
took
from
his
just following his
course.
blog.
I
Okay.
took I took the Fire Your Financial Advisor course. It's basically his book in
Yeah.
like little mini videos over and
Okay.
over.
Yeah, guys like
Um,
that have a lot of different, bloggers and these educators have so many different ways to get the same information is probably what you find, right? There's
yeah,
a
it's
lot of fresh
redundant. That's
stuff
why I
for
didn't read the
sure, but
book.
right.
Yeah, it's
Between his
super
YouTube
redundant.
videos,
Yeah.
his podcast, his blog, his book, his Twitter feed, his emails,
Hmm.
like you want to
Yeah.
make sure you don't miss anything. That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
But we certainly do the same thing. We've got this podcast, we've got the YouTube didactic minute videos, we've got the blogs, we've got everything. So nothing
Right.
wrong with that. Other books. I mean, I would say The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I think that has a bearing on personal finance because one of the biggest takeaways from that book for me, one of the habits was begin with the end in mind
Hmm.
and making decisions, especially in finances, on beginning with the end in mind and making sure, like you said, every decision can be reversed, right? Is that how you put it?
Yeah, I
Making
was saying
reversible
make
decisions.
reversible decisions. Yeah,
Hmm.
make
So,
reversible decisions quickly. Really, I guess is the idea.
yeah, quickly, right. So, for example, getting it's something like an app like Mint or Personal Capital or something for tracking your budget.
Hmm.
Like, okay, no big deal. If I don't like it, I'll delete it. It doesn't affect me financially. It's free. Just get something, do something, right? Is kind of the gist of what's that saying. Now, something like disability insurance. Should you go after it? Yeah, that's not so easily reversible in the sense of can you always cancel it? Yeah, you might be out a
Yeah.
few months premium if you're like, oh, I made a dumb decision here. So again, not the end of the world. And it might cost you $100 in a couple months of spent premium that you learned a lesson of whatever, and you're going to do much better next time.
Hmm.
Um, Things like that. Starting a Roth IRA, what do you have to lose? Probably nothing, I guess, unless you invested
I
in some
mean,
penny stocks inside of it.
yeah, and you can take all those individual decisions. And I was thinking in terms of just like get a one-time financial plan. Just put it all down, and I'm sure you can pay monthly for different like fee
Yeah.
only financial advising. Just like try it once. Pick one
Yep.
that's like not going to crush you financially. If you throw down $500 or even more on a one-time financial plan, even if it's not all the details, it's not all the bells and whistles, it's not going to be one plan for 20 years. It's going to get you like, it's going to get your mindset. It's going to get the train moving in the right direction. Like,
Yes.
just so you're actually taking action, it's going to point you towards, maybe I do want to start a
Mm-hmm.
Roth, but
Yeah.
it's like at least gets you moving. And the people who are going to put that off for a really long time, they know who they are, right? Or the people who
Mm-hmm.
know, like, I'm really never going to read a book on this. I don't care about this. I've talked to a couple of friends recently, and they're like, I don't want to manage any of my finances, period. And I'm
Yeah.
like, really? Like, it's really, it can be like huge. We're talking like for a physician, the white coat investor talks about multiple millions of dollars between this decision and this decision over a 20-year period of time, not to mention a 30-year period of time.
Yep.
And they're like, yeah, but like, I just don't really want to do it. And I'm like, millions of dollars. And they're like, I
Are
don't
you?
care. You know what I
Uh,
mean?
yeah.
So, and like, we don't identify with that, but like that person can still hire somebody like you who does,
Mm-hmm.
and then they can go about their life, and they don't like, I want to live in the spreadsheet. I like living in the spreadsheet. I'm
Yep.
going to live in the spreadsheet because I guess I'm just born that way. I like it. I know I can't get
Mm-hmm.
away from it. It's fun. I still enjoy my life. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't take away from any of my enjoyment. But like, other people don't want to do it. They can, for very cheap, create a plan that's
Mm-hmm.
automated with someone like yourself or somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
it's an
Agreed.
incredibly valuable product. Like, if you made it up and it was just invented right now, you'd be like, whoa, what does it do? It makes me a
Yeah.
bunch of money, and I just have to hire somebody, and that's all they do for me.
Yep.
It's one of those things where if you kind of like reverse look at it, you're like, that's an amazing value, rather than you feel like you're being sold it. Then you're like, okay, wait, let me first reject that, and let me save my money and assume that it's not worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's reversible. I mean, a lot of people are
Yeah.
doing month to
For
month
sure.
now, and you can just cancel anytime
Right.
you want. I
Yeah.
buy
Like.
stuff, I cancel. I just tried a new cereal,
Mm-hmm.
Magic Spoon. It's amazing. Um,
What? What is
I
this?
love it. Yeah, it's really good. It's advertised on tons of podcasts and stuff, which is probably where I heard about it.
Right. Is
But
it a mail order cereal
yeah, it's one of those
or something?
companies. They just have like
Like
one product. They
subscription?
make
Mm-hmm.
super tasty subscription based cereal, and it's low glycemic index, but it tastes really good. So it tastes like Fruit Loops is one of the flavors basically, and
Ah.
it doesn't have a bunch of sugar. Like, you can eat it and your glucose doesn't spike. So it's super
Oh.
healthy.
It's good for kids.
Um, it's good for kids. It's got
My
healthy
kids don't
oils.
need sugar. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I was like, worst case scenario, I spent, a silly amount on cereal like for 1 month. It's like
Mm-hmm.
$40 for four smallish boxes.
Yeah.
And best case scenario, I'm healthier, actually eat breakfast in the morning, which I do now,
Yeah.
and I'm more energized throughout the day. I'm in a better mood.
Yeah.
Um, it's great. I mean, yeah, I love it.
So Magic
So
Spoon,
there
if
you
you're
go.
hearing this, we'd be happy to have you sponsor the show.
Yeah,
So
it's a great idea.
I think they owe us for these last 2 minutes already. So
It's just a good example of a reversible decision. And yeah, for
yeah,
sure. I don't mind plugging a company. It's a great example. It's like, it's so great. It stands out so much in my mind
yeah,
that I want like other people to enjoy it. And I feel the same way about taking control of your financial future. However you
yeah,
do it, whoever you hire, um, it's great. It's just such a good feeling. Yeah.
yeah. And that's, I think in that same, we're talking about making decisions. I talked to uh, my wife and I talk about this all the time. We've talked about it since we were dating, of how I make decisions and how she makes decisions. I'm pretty well thought out. When I make a decision, though, it's done and I've made it
Hmm.
and I move on, and I don't have any regrets. And what I think about when I'm making a decision, it's usually bigger decisions. We're not talking about huge decisions, but I think about, okay, what's the worst case scenario here? And am I okay with it? If I am, or it's like, okay, I can deal with it, or the reward way outweighs the worst case scenario, then we make it and move on. Case in point, again, so take FinancialMD. If you're a single resident, it's $45 a month as of today's recording for a financial plan. And yes, obviously we prefer you to stick with that for a long period of time. But if you're like, this wasn't what I thought it was, and you back out, then that's it. It's a month to month thing. And so you're out 45 times how many months you were in the program. And if you didn't learn something, then I would be shocked, right? In those few months where you didn't gain something that was worth the 90 or $150 that you spent on that for a few months of that. And that's the beauty of financial planning, is it seems like most of the work is done up front. There's certainly plenty of ongoing work, but it's like a physician or an ER doc. They come to the ER and you're just trying to get them stable, and then you turf them off to internal medicine or to ICU to kind of maintain or keep him alive. But it's like, okay, I got to bring this guy back to life, and then we're going to keep him alive after that. It works.
Yeah, that's right.
Same way here.
Which is why a lot of places charge a ton up front.
Yeah, and I get it. And that's, I second guess that all the time.
Yeah.
But I think we wouldn't be the number one financial planner for residents if we were charging, it's $500 up front and then $45 a month. We just wanted to make it a very low barrier of entry to get some good financial planning. So,
that's great. That's great. I know you have a vision for doing more than just bringing on as many, wealthy clients as you can, or else you wouldn't be doing that type of work. $45 a month for residents.
For sure.
Yeah, it's a good price.
Yeah, and for us, it's just FinancialMD is about being the best in the world at resident financial planning. There's plenty of places out there that are great financial advisors for doctors, and that's all they do, but it's $3,000 a year minimum. And let me think. The one offhand that is probably the most well-known as far as I can think of, he's $6,000 a year starting. And which a lot of attending physicians are paying that, and that's great, and I get it, and they do great work, but I don't know of any residents that are going to pay that.
Right.
That's $500 a month. And most of the residents I meet with don't have that kind of surplus. So that's all we were trying to do when we started FinancialMD. And like I said, if the worst thing that happens is you get some education and you come away knowing a little bit more, then great. But certainly we wanted to take this show today to help point you in some directions of where to get the education. Obviously, our kind of flagship, I guess, is our resident lecture series that we do for residency programs all around the country to try to at least get some education out there. Clearly, not all of those residents are going to work with us. That's not the point. The point is disseminating the education, getting the knowledge and information out there, giving some good follow-up, take action things. And then beyond that, it's, we've obviously got some passive education here at FinancialMD between this podcast, our YouTube video channel, our blog, the website, the social media channels. We've got all those things for sure. What I love to do throughout the week is I'm watching for videos and articles that I can share with you guys that's going to benefit you. And as I read through, which I do every day, I'm I'm going to stick this on Twitter, or I'm going to throw this on Facebook, and this can be helpful to somebody else, especially student loan stuff. I get every day, twice a day, probably emails about Google alerts I have going on with student loans. So rest assured, we're staying on top of it and trying to get the information out to you guys as fast as we can, which is timely because there's all sorts of flurry of chatter going around about Biden and student loan forgiveness and blah, blah, blah.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of it is
interesting.
It's a lot of hot air. I think
topic.
That's not going to come out to much. My gut is maybe 10 grand per person, which for some people, hey, that's great.
Kind of what I guessed. Yeah. Yep.
For doctors, worth it.
I'll take it. I would take it.
Yeah.
It's 10 grand is 10 grand. It'd be good.
Yeah.
It'll make a difference. That's a reasonable amount. I wouldn't be surprised if it was even lower, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we'll have to see. Maybe they won't do it at all. I don't know. They'll just weigh out whether it's popular or not, I think, is the bottom line.
Yeah.
Um,
Depends on the congressmen and senators that are up for election in 2 years.
yeah. So we'll
That's a
see what
lot of it.
happens. It'll be an interesting time.
Any other info you think we should give them?
Oh, the other thing I was going to do is just if people have questions, the other obvious channel is email me.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be switching over my email to something probably more official with the FinancialMD thing soon. But
Yeah, we'll
my
say.
available email is trevorsmithmd@gmail.com.
Okay. Yeah, well, I think
So
let's launch that. All right, tsmith@financialmd.com. There you go.
yeah, that's fine. I mean, you can email me with either one. I'm fine with either.
Okay.
So just first name, last name, md@gmail.com, and then I'll get an email with you too. So it's easy. I mean, I check all my emails just like everybody else. They all just go to one spot. It almost makes no difference for me.
All right.
So anyways, yeah, I mean, my favorite conversations throughout the day oftentimes are a friend group chat, just talking about this topic or that topic about finance, or lately it's been trying to pick out what's the best long-term car,
Mm-hmm.
low price and all that. So
Mm-hmm. What are you
that's
settling
what
on? Have you kind of made a decision, or are you still?
I said. Well, I'm not going to buy one. I like my car, which I just found out has a high trade-in value of $3,300,
Okay.
and I'm happy with that. I
Yeah.
just reread Jim Daly's post on the White Coat Investor.
Mm-hmm.
He was driving a Dodge Durango for like forever until like I think part of it started falling off. And it was just encouragement, like, yeah, other people do this too. Like, and I like
Yeah.
my car. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just trying to plan ahead. Like if mine bites the bullet, I don't want to have to feel like I'm scrambling to choose what's the best next car.
Yeah.
So I already picked out, I think the Mazda CX-5 and the Lexus RX 350 are like no brainers. They're both really good.
Mm-hmm.
You could buy any used model for the Lexus probably from the last 10 years. And for the Mazda, the last 3 years, it's like, that's great. I mean, you're only going to get down to like 20,000 probably, which is, I think, out of my price range for the short term.
Mm-hmm.
But with like a used Lexus RX 350, we live in Michigan, so I want an all-wheel drive. I prefer to switch over to an SUV. I drive a sedan right now.
Yeah.
So, and you target that category, those two are so reliable.
Hmm.
It's insane. It's like a Toyota Corolla. I mean, you know how those are the
Yeah.
gold standard. These
Yeah.
are like pretty much right up there.
Hmm. Sounds like you've
Anyways,
done
I've
your research.
been nerding out on that for like a week.
Yeah. Huh.
I
See.
certainly have not made my hourly. They try to say like spend your time on project like this that have some sort of return. Like if you can
Uh-huh.
spend 3 hours on a car negotiation and save $3,000, you've made $1,000 per hour that you spent on that.
Right.
Well, I mean, I'm definitely making like $2 an hour right now, but it's fun, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, you enjoy it, and I know whatever topic you spend your mind on is one I can usually ask you about, and you become an expert pretty quick. So,
Just if it saves me money, then usually that's the case. Yeah.
yes. Good. Anything else? I think
That's
that
it.
was some good meat.
It's fun talking, man.
Good. You too. Check us out, guys, on the YouTube. We've got the Didactic Minute video channels you can subscribe to. We've got some great topics that have come out lately, very timely ones that are keeping up to date on some of the things that are coming down the pike with student loans. Otherwise, connect with us on Twitter, our Facebook page, group, Instagram. There's places all over to make sure you're getting the most up-to-date info on financial education for young physicians. Other than that, I'm John. That's Trevor over there. And thanks for joining us on the Financial MD show. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, John.